everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jenna Redfield. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I'm so excited to talk about, and that is family history and genealogy. If you didn't know, I am a huge genealogy nerd. I have spent the last over 10 years building up my family tree on Ancestry, and I have done so much research on my own with my own family. In addition to that, we are going to be talking about how important it is to preserve all of your family's items, whether it's photos or videos or stories that your family tell, and we're going to be talking about how to put them online on places like Google Photos, as well as how to use things like Ancestry.com to create your own family tree. So there's a lot of things I want to cover in this video. It's going to be two parts. Part one is going to be about preserving your digital and physical memories. And then the second part is going to be talking a little bit more about how to do family research and genealogy research. So there's a lot to get to in this video. I would love to do a part two at some point where I share with you guys some of my favorite family stories that I have discovered over the years, some really interesting ones that I have found. But we're gonna make it very, very practical for you guys, and let's just get started. Make sure to follow for more. I do a lot of content around Notion, ADHD, marketing, as well as digital organization. So make sure to follow everything below, and let's just get to this video. Okay, so part one, we're gonna be talking about how to preserve your memories, especially in things like Google Photos, which is where I keep all of my stuff. Why is it important to preserve photos and videos? Well, first off, you want to be able to look back on the things from the past. A lot of times when you have family members that pass away, or you move around, sometimes things get lost. So one of the things I recommend doing is going through and finding all of the photos and videos that you have of your family history. This could be in boxes in the attic or wherever they are. Having a space where you bring them all together so you can look through them. And the nice thing is, if your older relatives are still alive, they can actually tell you who the people are. Unfortunately, my grandma passed away in October, but my grandpa's still alive, but he unfortunately has dementia and Alzheimer's. So he remembers certain things, and actually I'm going to insert a clip here, but I started asking him questions about some photos, and it was like so amazing to have.
From Norway.
Yeah. I wasn't there.
Yeah, I know. But this was your dad, right? His family when he was a kid? Yep. David Redfield? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a lot of siblings.
You heard, Jenna, how many?
This was you when you were little. That's
Yep.
what I found.
This is Junior Wallender.
Oh, okay. He's got a little funny face.
This is Phyllis Wallendorf. And this is
Okay.
Lucille Spellinger.
Okay, these are all your cousins.
This is another cousin. She's the oldest one of the Wallendorfs. Her and him.
Yeah.
But their brother Bud they wouldn't come to the.
So your grandfather went back to Norway, right?
Yep.
And then he lived there?
He got married out there.
Oh, he did? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So being able to record memories with grandparents or great-grandparents is an amazing tool to have if you have them still alive. It's important because, what if there's a fire or a flood? You could lose these physical memories forever. But here's a more important one that may happen to a lot of people is photos and videos, specifically videos, especially on things like VHS tapes, they disintegrate and degrade over time. So even if you have a ton of home videos from the 90s that are sitting on VHS tapes, they might be slowly degrading. So a couple of years ago, I actually had a friend's dad convert all of my home videos, not to DVD, but to a physical file from my computer so that I could actually upload it to the cloud. I recommend doing this over converting it to DVDs because in 10 years, DVDs are probably going to be obsolete. So what I recommend doing is there are places you can go, places like Costco and other stores where you can actually convert your VHS tapes. This is kind of the first step of the process, is gathering all of the different photos and videos that you have. Another thing I recommend doing is scanning physical photos. Now, I recently invested in a photo scanner. This is specifically for photos. All you do is you just drop the photo in and it scans it straight into your computer. This was not cheap. This was over $200. But I was like, I have so many photos to scan, and I had been doing the photo, taking a photo with my phone method, and I just didn't love it. So I decided to invest in a photo scanner. I'm not saying that you need to do this, but it might make sense if you have tons and tons of photos to scan and you want them to be preserved. This is something that I think is so important because you can use it in so many ways. You can obviously use it to save, but you can also use it maybe for content, sharing it on social media, pictures of you as a kid. I think that's always fun to do, like a Throwback Thursday. There are other things that you can grab that can convert things. So maybe if you have old, like bigger tapes from like the 70s or 80s, or if you have slides, you can buy a slide scanner. There are so many different tools that you can use to get your files onto the computer. To me, this is the most important part of this process, is getting them off of just the physical media and onto your computer, because then you have them backed up. We'll be talking a little bit later how I organize Google Photos with this, but getting them onto the computer so that you can look at them. You can also edit. There's lots of Photoshop options, especially if something's maybe scratched up or really, really blurry. You can definitely use awesome tools like on Canva to improve the media as well. Another thing is you want to make sure that your photos are organized in a way. So for example, when my mom's mom passed away, we got all of her photos. And so I spent a couple of days just going through them and kind of organizing them by decade. So I was like, okay, these are like black and white, so they're probably from the 40s and 50s, and it was just a really great way to kind of organize them by year. In general, I didn't know when a lot of them were taken, but now it's like I have a box, you know, a specific photo box of my grandma's photos from like the 50s through the 80s, and so I'm able to look back at those, and then when I scan them, the nice thing about Google Photos is you can change the date, so you can actually organize them by date. There's so many tools. I love Google Photos, you guys. But anyways, I just wanted to share that as well. So when it comes to backing up your photos, I would recommend a few things. First off, the cloud. Google Photos is my recommendation, but you can also use things like iCloud or Apple, I guess, or you could also use just other tools, Dropbox, that sort of thing. For me, one of the things I like to do is I also share it with my family. So I have actually uploaded all of my home videos from VHS onto Google Photos, and then I shared it with like 4 or 5 people in my family so that they can watch and look at those videos as well. I would also recommend getting something like an external hard drive to back up all your photos. I have tons of videos and stuff from like high school that I have backed up on there that I took, so I'm able to actually have those in case something happens to the cloud. We're going to be talking about Google Photos at the very end, but I wanted to mention now, if you're doing research on genealogy, some of my favorite tools and resources, because I have been so obsessed with going down the rabbit hole of my own family history. Literally 10 years ago this month, which was like June 2014, I had just graduated college and I started my genealogy journey. And I started an Ancestry account, I started building out my tree, and what's cool about Ancestry now is there's so many more resources even than there was 10 years ago. But one of the first things I also did as well was I actually did a DNA test. If you scroll back on my YouTube channel, it's one of the very first videos I ever posted on this channel, and it was me in 2014 doing my Ancestry DNA test and seeing my results. It's very funny because they haven't changed too much. I'm mostly Swedish, part Norwegian, and a little bit Scottish, but you can kind of tell with the hair. But at the time, I was very underwhelmed because I was like, okay, it's exactly what I thought. Since then, I've had multiple family members do it as well, so it's been fun to kind of reconnect. I also have found some interesting relatives on there that I didn't know existed. That's a story for another day. But I think there's a lot of really interesting ways that you can use Ancestry DNA. I don't know about you, but I love watching like Find My Family and all these like DNA secret shows. There's a ton of them here on YouTube. But I will recommend if you're going to be doing DNA testing, I recommend doing either Ancestry or 23andMe. Ancestry actually has the biggest pool, so I always recommend Ancestry because and then you can also build your tree as well. So it's kind of an all-in-one tool. There's also things like Family Search. There's tons of resources. Another thing, if you live in the United States, you can actually use the library if you have a library card, and a lot of them have Ancestry. You have to go physically to the library, but they have an Ancestry option where you can get much more records. I've spent many hours at the library going down rabbit holes of Ancestry records that I don't get at home because I don't pay for the subscription, but that's another tool that you can use as well. When you're doing your own research, make sure to talk to your relatives. Like I mentioned before, when I recorded my grandfather, he gave me so many details and things about his cousins and his family, stories that I didn't know, and writing them down is great. In fact, my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother, wrote an entire book about her life, and I have it on PDF. I actually scanned this with my phone and I uploaded it, and I keep it in Notion. And it literally talks about her experience growing up in Minnesota. And I'm like, wow, she died when I was 7. So I would have never been able to ask her these questions. And so I actually have a record of her life here. There's some really great tools and resources you can get online, different apps and things, but even just having your grandparents or parents writing some of the stories of their life down is super valuable. And then sharing it with your family. We've done some family reunions. In fact, one of my favorite stories of all of this is I got to meet a relative from Norway. He messaged me years ago on Ancestry and was like, hey, we're distant, really related. And I was like, oh my gosh, an ancestor, like someone who I'm related to from Norway. And he ended up coming to the US and I got to meet him. It was amazing. He even did like a whole Norwegian prayer with us. I was like, this is insane. And this is just because of Ancestry.com. I literally have gotten to do so many cool things just from researching my family history. There are so many other resources as well. One of my favorites is to go to churches, cemeteries, historical societies. I actually took a trip up to a town called Lindstrom, Minnesota, which is a very small Swedish town in Minnesota. And I wanted to research my great-grandmother. She died in 1928 when my grandfather was just 10 years old. And I got to see not only where she was buried, I got to see the house that she grew up in, which is now an antique store. I'm not even joking, it still exists. I got to see the church where she was confirmed at, and I got to find a photo of her, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the youngest photo I've ever seen of her. I've maybe seen 3 other photos in my life. This is my great-grandmother, you guys. Like, I literally had I didn't even know her name until I started doing my ancestry research. She had died so long ago. And I was able to also learn more about her in the Historical Society and learn more about the family business. It was literally such a life-changing day for me because I was like connected to my roots. It was an experience I will never forget for the rest of my life. And I documented a lot of it, so I'm just going to be showing some photos here. For me, what has been great is I've been able to connect with family members, share my stories with them. I'm young, I'm 32. I started doing this when I was 22. And it was like, why is this young girl doing all this research? But I just was like so interested in it. And for me, I just absolutely love the idea of reaching back and learning where my family came from, or where my family name came from, or just like where are some of the traits that I have from. It's so interesting to see how, we came to America, how, where we're from before we came to America. A lot of people don't know where they're from. The stories have been lost to time. And so I think that having an interest and a curiosity in your family history is so valuable. So I wanted to show you guys also my Ancestry account. I'm not going to show you guys some of the newer stuff just because I have family members that are still alive that I would probably not want to dox. So I'm going to show you some of the older people and kind of how I've gone back in time. So for example, one of my favorite lines of my family tree is my great-grandma Shirley. I've gone back really, really far. What's cool about it is, like, let me just walk into this. So you can see here, they've gotten some really cool new AI tools, but if you just click on the profile, they have a lot of options where you can just look through different records. So for example, this is just like a summary of her. You can literally see a timeline of when she was born, the birth of her sister. Again, and there's a lot of AI tools, which is so great, learn about the city. You can see like when her sons were born. And all of this is based off of a lot of just artificial intelligence at these days is they'll be like, oh, we've searched through all the records and this is what we think is her mother or, her birth record, that sort of thing. You can also just do search as well, but you can see there are facts about it, and then you can see the sources, so you can see all of the different census. If you didn't know, the 1950 census just came out last year, so there's a lot more things that have been added to Ancestry, but you can see, literally go back so far. You can also see the gallery of any photos. Like for example, if I click on this person, look at this photo. You can literally see this really, really old photo of this person. And this was uploaded by a distant family member, but a lot of my relatives on my tree were able to save that, which is super cool. So I wouldn't have even had this photo, but one of my distant relatives did. So I have been able to build out my tree. You can see here if I click on it, well, I thought I had it. I have over 3,000 people on this tree. When I tell you I get really into this, I'm not lying. So I've gone back so far on every branch. I try not to go too far down, and I don't need all of the siblings, but as long as it's a direct link, you can see this goes back to, I don't remember which one, but some of the lines go back, I went back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I don't remember how far it was, but I hit a line of royalty. So once you hit a royalty line, it's already been researched for you. So all you just have to do is just click add info. Within Ancestry, there's an option to look at, they call them like tree leaves, or like a suspected parent. So you can literally go through, as long as it looks good, you can like say, yes, I believe this is correct. I actually did get some of my tree incorrect, so I had to go back and delete a lot of it. And then now I know for sure it's the right ones. But sometimes you're just like going off of names, especially if they're common names. There's a lot to Ancestry research, but the search on here is amazing. You can see there's a ton of census records, birth, marriage, and death records, military, immigration, public member trees is really great. One of my favorite stories is I actually was helping a family member who I met through Ancestry DNA learn more, but the way that I was able to help him was his, I believe it was his sister or his mother, it was his mother, had done a ton of research before she passed, and she made a website that had a ton of information. So when he started looking for information, he was adopted, I was able to connect him with the website that his mother had made. I'll get like emotional and choked up just talking about it, because it was just such a full circle moment for me to be able to help him learn more about his family. There's also obviously the DNA. So if I go to, I'm not going to show matches, but I'll show my origins. It has evolved over time, as you can see. Oh, I don't want that. But you can see that it literally shows different people in my tree, or sorry, like it'll show where I'm from. You can see that it was updated in July 2023. So when I first got the test done, it said 76% Scandinavian, and now that has been broken down into 56% Swedish and 33% Norwegian, and even parts of where in Norway I'm from. And then you can see that there's even like an ancestor story. So it actually now goes through based off of my records and it's like, hey, we think that these people also were from there. So you can literally see, oh, Kirsten Anderson, my 5th great grandmother, so it's like you can see as it goes down, okay, this is probably where these people lived based off of the records as well as the DNA, which is so cool. So again, I've done so much research that I have a lot of people in my tree that are literally linking specifically back to where my DNA also confirms I'm from. So it's kind of a mix of both DNA and actual physical research, that a lot of the records have been scanned in much of, especially Europe, or at least in like Scandinavia where I'm from, a lot of the records have been scanned. So that has been nice. In fact, actually some of my family members went to Scandinavia and looked in the actual churches and found the records before Ancestry even really existed. So we had some of that already, which is so cool, because a lot of them are in like churches and stuff, like baptism records. So I highly recommend, you don't have to go as deep as I did, but I recommend just like learning about your grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. If you're adopted, doing the DNA test might be a good idea, just see where you're from. Just know that there's a lot of can of worms that you might open if you do that. And even if you aren't adopted and you want to learn more about your family, just know that you might come across some things or some people that you may not have expected. So just know that going in to be wary and cautious. But otherwise, I absolutely love having my DNA and just knowing exactly where I'm from, knowing, seeing how much my dad is versus how much my mom is. It's very, very interesting for me to see all of this stuff, and everything has lined up for the most part in what I know about my family. Okay, so the last part of this video is I'm going to be showing you guys how I organize some of my Google photo albums for family history stuff, and maybe show you guys some of my favorite things that I've collected. Okay, so as you guys have seen, if you've watched my Google Photos organization video, which I highly recommend watching just so you understand, I have organized all of my photos into the 13 pillars. And so family is purple. And then what I do is I do family, and then the name of the album. So for example, this is actually a great example. So when I was organizing photos for my step-grandpa's funeral, I was able to scan a ton of different photos. These are just some photos, but I was able to have this album. So then when I was creating the slideshow for his funeral, we had all these photos of him. You can literally see some of these were just literally me taking a photo. This was before I had my scanner. So that was one thing that you can do, is you can create photos, especially of different people. The nice thing about Google Photos, for example, let me just use this as an example. You can see it literally can tag the people, which allows you to then quickly create albums with certain people in them. So that's an example of something that you can do. Like, for example, I have my parents' wedding photos in here. So if I'm ever doing like an anniversary post, I can just share those. But the one that I really like, and I have, you can see there's 1,100 images in, and that is my childhood photos. So I have an album just for photos of my childhood. So if you click on it, I think I also put videos in here as well. So yeah, you can see I have a ton of home videos, but you can see me as a child. Some of these are not the best quality. I need to rescan them, but you can see what I do is, you see this is a picture of me as a baby. I think this was probably around November. So then what I did was I changed the time. So then everything is organized by year or by time of year. So literally as you scroll through all of these photos, I get older and older. So this is a really great way to organize like photos of yourself as a child. Again, you can tag people in them. You can see this is my dad. So, and then I have 40 minutes of footage of a home video. However, I do have a separate one called home videos. And what I've done with this is, you can see here that I have shared this to multiple, I think I have 8 people on this album. And what I've done is, once I converted all of my home videos, I will upload them inside of Google Photos. I create an album, and then you can see as you scroll through, all of these are footage. This is me on my first birthday. You can see we have tons, you can even see some of the scratches because it's again on a VHS tape. For me, this has been so amazing to have all this footage, and we have years and years of it. So for me, having clips of me growing up, piano recitals, that sort of thing. Some of these are, it's so funny how they get worse over time in terms of quality, but this is all stuff that I can, use in the future. But this is how I organize all of my home videos when it comes to that sort of thing. Some other things that I have here is, I have my family history recorded in 2 different albums. So I have my dad's side and my mom's side. So if I click on dad's side, this is kind of random, but you see I have scanned some old photos. An example of when we all met my Norwegian relative. We have literal like pictures of, this is family research that we've done, that sort of thing. And then we have pictures, here's who it is. Here's again the prayer, the Norwegian prayer, me. His name is Kolbjorn. So you can see even some of these are screenshots of things I found on Ancestry.com. So for example, this was like a picture that I found of one of my ancestors from Norway. You can see literally just like, these are almost like, old photos that maybe one of my relatives uploaded to Ancestry that I can now save and put in my own photo album. You can see all this stuff was written in Norwegian, but it was, I believe, translated. So I have the translated option as well. A lot of my family has done a lot of research. So this was again the book that my great grandma wrote called The Way It Was. There's so much to this. These are videos of my grandfather explaining stuff and the family. I just took pictures of my grandparents' scrapbooks. So I have all this. So I just put everything, all the documentation is just all in this one. This is actually a family reunion that happened in 2022. This is before my grandma passed. This was my grandma. We were so lucky that we're able to have all 4 of her and her sisters talk about some of the family history, and I actually recorded some of that. So I was able to then have footage. We went to the cemeteries where their family's buried. It was just a beautiful time to be able to have all this family history documented. And then on my mom's side, this is the stuff that I've done a ton more research on because we didn't know a lot about my grandfather's mother. So you can see here I have these old photos that we found. These are ones that have been scanned. Some of them are me with my grandma, but like you can literally see some of these are super, super old photos. This is my grandma and her friends. This is my grandma here in Minneapolis, which is where I live now, which I think is so cool. It's like this is like in the probably early 50s. I think that's amazing that she has that. And then I just have, again, like just lots of pictures that I've scanned. I might probably need to rescan. I also, like if I'm doing research, I'll take pictures of people on Facebook, be like, this is a relative of mine. This is when I went to go visit the town of Lindstrom and we went to the Historical Society. I took a ton of photos of all the stuff to learn more about the family. I have tons of different records in here. This was actually, if you go to Lindstrom, Minnesota, there is an actual restaurant and it's called Gustav's on Main. And it actually is an historic house, and that is actually a distant relative of mine. So if you're ever in Lindstrom, Minnesota, I got lots of history there. So you can see I took a ton of photos. This was my great grandmother's house, and that was an amazing experience. As we scroll, you can see the photo that I think looks just like me, and it's my great-grandmother, Esther. Pictures of the church that she grew up in. I mean, I literally documented everything, her gravestone, all the stuff I found on Find a Grave, which, and here's me, haha. What's cool about this city is that it is literally based off of Sweden, so this is the Swedish flag. You can see there's actually a little kettle here. Highly recommend Lindstrom if you're ever in Minnesota. It's like about an hour north of the cities. But yeah, so this is all just family history photos. This is actually my relative in Sweden and the house. I actually found this through somebody I met on Ancestry. She sent this to me. So there's a ton of stuff that I have learned over the years, and all I do is I just pop it into this Google Photos album and I have it all there. So it's been a really, really great experience doing all of this, using Ancestry, using actual records, going to the places and finding it, and being able to document all of that inside of here. All right, so thank you guys for watching this video today and indulging me with being able to talk about one of my special interests, which is family history and genealogy. I highly recommend, if you're interested in family history and genealogy, there's a ton of resources below if you haven't started your process yet. I recommend creating a free Ancestry account and using some of their tools. I recommend, starting to scan your photos and videos from your family, because I think it's important. You always say, I'll do it one day, but you never know what could happen to your house. You never know what could happen to somebody in your family. So start doing it if you have time right now. And hopefully some of these tools and tips will help you stay organized and have a place to put all of your precious memories. If you guys like this video and you want more about this topic, which I would absolutely love to do, please comment below, because I will definitely do a part 2 if you guys want it, because this, again, is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I can geek out all day on genealogy and family research. Anyways, I hope that you guys like this video, and I'll talk to you next time.